a solar installer takes it for granted that they can sell a $20, $30, $50,000 system to homeowners, they build real trust there. Without it, nobody would sign, right? So because you have a business and they sign, you have that trust. And I think they don't realize enough how much that actually, or hard it is. Now it's a real cost of acquisition, you can put a number to it too, but in the end, that trust, a homeowner would prefer a long-term relationship with a solar installer, right? And I think solar installers can lean more into it.
And this is Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Each show, we bring you usable insights from tested leaders that you can apply to the business of running your business. Residential solar installers spend thousands of dollars earning a homeowner's trust. Unfortunately, that relationship is often abandoned the moment the install is complete. My guest today, Hervé Billiet, believes those long-term customer relationships are one of the industry's most underappreciated assets. Hervé is the CEO of Sunvoy. It's a software that helps solar installers stay connected with homeowners long after the installation. In our conversation, we explore how AI is changing solar, why installers are sitting on a gold mine of customer relationships, and why he thinks that the companies that thrive are the same ones who are going to think beyond the initial sale. Here's my interview with Hervé. I hope you enjoy it. All right, well, let's jump in here. I'm excited to speak with you, Hervé. The first thing that we'd like to do is just start out by having you tell our listeners, if they haven't heard of Sunvoy, what is that company? What do you do?
Hi everyone, I'm Hervé. I'm the CEO of Sunvoy, and we are a customer care platform for solar installers. So it goes back to when I was a CEO of another company, a solar installation business, mainly resi, some commercial. We were 60 people doing 12 million revenue, to give you a sense of the company I was running. And I had a problem for myself. One was customer care. Simply put, you can buy today a Domino pizza for $20 and track and see how it's going when you place your orders, when it's in the oven being shipped. So you're aware of where things are. But you buy a $20,000 or $200,000 solar system, you're usually in the dark. Or, especially large utility, you have different meetings and it's like a lot of effort to keep customers up to date. Now, on the utility side, it's usually complicated. You don't have hundreds of projects, but on the residential side, it's high volume. So how do you keep all those customers always up to date? And the answer is a customer portal. And so I build a customer portal for my own solar company and start selling it to others. And so at its simplest, it's keeping the customers up to date about projects. Now, over time, it evolved into fleet management, so you can monitor all your systems, a lot of automations, a lot of different things. But at its core, that's what Sunvoy does.
I've got solar panels on my roof. I have the Enphase app. That's how I track if my panels are working or not. But does your app do more than that? Just tell a customer whether the panels are working?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what happens is that the homeowner looks at Enphase, and if there's a problem, like, oh yeah, who installed my solar system? They kind of forget about it. That's the problem. And the core of the problem is not just that they forget if there is a problem, but also if they want to install more batteries or have the panels changed, clean, maintenance, whatever happens, homeowners tend to forget who installed their solar system. And so if you give an app to a homeowner, but not just a random app, right? It's your own branded app. So what Sunvoy does is we make white label apps for solar installers. So it's in the Apple Store, Google Play Store, and so on, but it's always branded for the installer. So Sunvoy is not mentioned anywhere. What that does is that a homeowner or commercial property real estate owner that signs with a solar installer, they trust that installer. Going solar, as we mentioned before, it's not a small ticket item. So there is a clear trust that needs to be established. And it's basically extending that trust, not just during the sales process, but also once everything's installed, during the construction phase, but also during the 20 plus years that system is going to run. And so to answer your question more directly, there's a lot more that we provide than just the OEM manufacturer's app. You can open tickets. You can have all your documents in one place. You are up to date about monthly energy reports, what's happening. A lot of OEMs don't provide like the clear value provided. A lot of people see kilowatt hours, but what matters most, even more to them, is the dollar saved, right? So what we are able to do is we look at what was in the contract, what was on a design done, and then compare that with the actual energy production. And then we also have a way to adjust it. But basically at its core, Sunvoy allows a solar installer to look at two pieces. One was what's the design and the estimated production, and then what's the actual production. Compare those two. So that is something that an Enphase was your example, or other OEMs don't have. They only have one piece of the puzzle. It's like the actual production. Now we do this for residential, but also large commercial. And so once it's weather adjusted, you really put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Now, for the utility scale large commercial that we do, this is not that high volume. But if you want to do this high volume for all your customers, residential, like thousands and thousands of systems, having everything fully automated is a blessing in disguise.
And I imagine then that from the installer's perspective, if they have this real-time data where they're saying, hey, this is the design that we planned, here's the actual output, seeing that delta, if there is one, I imagine that could help them design better systems in the future. Do you find that your installers are using it for that projecting and future estimate purpose?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's another part during a sales process when you tell a homeowner, hey, look at our entire fleet. This is everything we ever monitor. Here is how we produce. We had 98% or we had 101%. I mean, once you're in that range, you actually show either a homeowner or property manager, like, look, we have a way to track it. What we promise you and what we actually deliver. That is something that doesn't exist on the residential level. And so going back to all your legacy customers, compiling all that data, fully automated by the way, like that is a number, not just as you mentioned, but also doing the sales process. It creates that trust, right? When you sign with a solar installer, there's got to be trust. And showing a map of all your systems, this is everything we've ever installed, and here is how we produce over time. I think that is you increase that trust there.
I think that's so interesting. And I've got to say, I agree with you. And quite frankly, I'm concerned because there's a lot of different installers out there of different types of businesses, and not all of them have been completely fair to homeowners. And so I think there's a lot of mistrust in the industry because some company had a bad deal and they didn't treat the homeowners well. And so I think there's an incredible need for our industry to really be more proactive in gaining that trust and establishing that, hey, we are going to be here. I'm wondering, do you find that solar installers go back to a customer and have repeat business? Like,
Yeah.
In what case would that be?
So our typical customer is a solar installer that's been in business for like 5 years, 10 years, like an established business. In the beginning, we only sold PV, right? That was the only thing on the market. You could sell a few batteries, one off grid systems, but everything was always complicated, custom engineering. So you didn't do a lot of them. Then came Tesla with their like prepackaged battery. Well, before that was Sun, and we like pre-engineering, everything clicks in. We tried that. It was actually way harder than like everything's plug and play. But the industry has evolved, that's my point, where now it is a lot more plug and play. I say more, it's not fully plug and play yet. But over time, there are more services that a solar installer provides. Just PV becomes not PV, and battery, EV chargers, some are going into roofing or insulation. There's a lot more services. And so there is a cost of acquisition of a homeowner. That's a really high cost in our industry. Now, that cost of acquisition gets crushed if you don't just do one sale, but you do multiple sales. Now, the goal is, and we have that in the platform. So once you have a homeowner's eyeballs and trust, then there is like an e-shop where you show like, oh, we also do this, this, and then this. Most installers forget that a homeowner doesn't know everything you do because it changes over time. And so if you start doing more batteries or you start doing just other services, the homeowner doesn't know. They don't track your website every day. And so the Sunvoy platform, again, is white label and allows an installer to reach out to their customers, communicate via text, email, push notification, and in the app and tell them what's happening. And once you have the trust of the homeowner, if you have PV installed, would you want first to have a quote from if you're interested in batteries, or if you want to have an EV charger? If you already went with them, you know hopefully they good work, and so there is that trust relationship that too many times the solar installer is focused on a few projects that went bad and forget the hundreds of thousands of projects that went well. And so there is a massive trust that they've built, and that is what we try to tell installers, that they have that trust, they can reuse it for other services.
Got it. I want to move on now and talk about you as you were building your career. Is there any lesson that somebody else taught you that still sticks with you today?
I come from a background of family businesses, so I think those are my mentors. My brother also runs his own business and buys other businesses, and so that is something that I look up to. I've also been part of larger corporations like Accenture Consulting, and doing a lot of different projects across a lot of different industries. That's also taught me a lot. Interestingly enough, I'm still in contact with my former boss at Accenture, and very smart person. And so they over time, not just when they are your boss, but if you actually have a good relationship with them, you stay in contact with them when paths diverge. And yeah, that's maybe one piece of advice that I love to give, is like, stay in contact with people you appreciate. It's way too easy to just have life take over and just never reach back out, but that's something I especially enjoy doing, because their career changes too. Yours also evolves and changes, and so staying in contact there. And it's interesting to call your former boss. I can tell you over time that kind of disappears a little bit, that he's my boss, he's my manager, and becomes just a good friend.
Nice, nice. And looking back again, just over the last year, have you made any decisions in the last year that you think other people in the industry would disagree with?
Yes, I made one decision thinking that after the big beautiful bill, or however you want to call it, the industry took a hit. I thought it would be less of a blow, and that people still want to have the cheapest power. And entire conversation with data centers, that people would still want to have independent power generated. Sadly, we see that it was a big hit. So we will still grow as a business, but it was a bigger blow than I expected. So.
How did you see that affect your customers, those deadlines? Did you notice like a rush to buy, a rush to install, and how are folks doing now?
No, I see a few had a very, very massive December. And after that, January, February was hard, I think, for most installers. And then once the spring arrived, like kind of slowly things are kicking back into gear, but it's hard. It seems to be hard. I cannot name any names, but obviously we see all the installations actually happening. As I mentioned, we do the fleet monitoring for all the installers, but so in general, I can see that things are kind of kicking back into gear, but it seems to be hard for a lot of installers.
I want to switch now. You did a recent podcast with Aaron Nichols, a fellow podcaster, and shout out to him. And you said that installers are sitting on a gold mine of customer relationships. What do you mean by that?
Is that trust that I spoke about earlier. A solar installer takes it for granted that they can sell a $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 system to homeowners. They build real trust there. Without it, nobody would sign, right? So because you have a business and they sign, you have that trust. And I think they don't realize enough how much that actually, or hard it is. Now, it's a real cost of acquisition. You can put a number to it too, but in the end, that trust, a homeowner would prefer a long-term relationship with a solar installer, right? And I think solar installers can lean more into it. I see too many think that, oh, we have a few angry customers. It's construction. By definition, there's always going to be something going wrong at some point. It's just a matter of how do you solve it. You tend to hear about it, the squeaky wheel, or like the one or a few angry customers. What you don't hear is all those happy customers that are out there, happy to represent you and ask for referrals and reviews. And so what we do is automate that part, right? So that is, I think, the gold mine that I keep talking about. Like we provide a pickaxe, and then solar installers have a way to reach out. Example, if you want to reach out for a promotion, Christmas, whatever it is, and the number one reason people say like, well, we cannot just send a blank email out to all our customers, like because a few of those systems stopped working, or you have an angry customer that's not fixed yet. So wouldn't it be nice to have an email system that ties into the inverters, all the different inverter brands that you build, and see which one is actually working? And only send the email to the ones that are working. Well, that is something that I built, but it didn't exist anywhere in the industry. So you kind of export here, export there, and then your marketing team spends a lot of time building it instead of like just a few clicks, write your message and send it out, filter on whatever you want. You want to reach out to people that like, hey, we have a promotion for batteries. Wouldn't it be nice to only send it to people that don't have batteries yet? Filters like that just don't exist in the solar industry. Well, until now, I guess, we build it. But my point is there's still a lot of innovation to be done for solar companies to run efficiently with automation in place and all of that. So yeah,
it's incredible. It's like a detailed CRM, customer relationship manager, built specifically for installers. That makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely. And here's a critical part. Most people don't think we are CRM, and we are not. We bolt on to an existing CRM. So we have integrations with over 20 or something different CRMs. So if you're on Salesforce, you stay on Salesforce. We bolt on and connect to your Salesforce. So you don't have to change change the way people work, because that is the hardest part, right? The tech, I mean, as much as it's fun, the hardest part about a CRM is not the tech. It's like having people actually use your CRM. So
ain't that the truth? Yeah. So you talked about how installers have a lot of room to evolve. Let's look back 5 years ago. What changes stand out to you the most from a solar installer today versus an installer 5 years ago?
Number one is what we install. PV only to PV and battery, to some of them battery first and then PV afterwards. I think the scale of how we install 5 or maybe 10 years ago was like small mom and pops companies and so on. And so they were small. And so when you're small, you have certain type of problems. Once those companies grow, they have just other problems. Well, we spoke about a CRM. In the past, there was no money to pay for a CRM. So now those companies grow, have thousands of customers, and are full-fledged companies. Maybe that's my point. You went from small companies to like full established companies with a management structure and so on. So I think the industry evolved to be more established. And that comes with a lot of different services. So you have more advisors and consulting companies that specialize on solar companies and can give advice about how to grow your business correctly. So that's an entire set of services that didn't exist before.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to shift gears now and talk about something I'm passionate about. That's marketing and AI. So the question is, do you use AI in your business, and how are you using it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sunvoy is a SaaS platform. We are a software company. So yes, we do use AI for multiple different ways. Right now, it's all internal, and it's not much as a feature service to our installers, but that's obviously coming. But I think we first want to test things internally, and here's a few examples. Like, we have a customer service team. You have a question, you talk to our people, and they solve your problem. But guess what? Like, we have a lot of procedures and processes in place internally in the company. And we pair that with an AI agent, and that agent keeps learning how we do things. And we tried this several times. We tried this last year, a few iterations, and it didn't go anywhere. This year, several months ago, we tried it again with more resources, and now it's just phenomenal. It's literally a new person on the team, to the point where the head of customer care went away for a week, and that agent was live for like a few weeks. And we thought like, well, this is the moment we're going to see what's happening. Like, and that agent has access to our code base, so they can see and read what's actually happening in the codes, but then also all the knowledge. Like, it's phenomenal. It went from like, oh, let's try this little thing, see if it works, to an actual member of the team. It's kind of strange to say it like that, but very knowledgeable, and it's a real service to our own employees. So like you have a question at whatever moment in time, you have a full-fledged answer. Like sometimes a bit too much in that, but you can set up your own settings there. But it's really impressive. So my point is, we use tools like that internally, and then we obviously gonna make them available to our own installers, right?
That makes a ton of sense. I'm going to change gears again, talk about learning and development. I always like to talk to guests and just hear what books or podcasts have influenced them. So, what books or podcasts would you recommend for our listeners?
A few. Well, first, the number one podcast, I think Suncast. Everybody knows Nico Johnson.
Yeah, shout out to Nico.
Shout out to Nico. I'll make a plug also for our own podcast, What Solar Installers Need to Know, which is geared towards solar installer CEOs. So very specific, very niche market. But there we kind of talk about the ins and outs of actually running a solar business, what works, what doesn't, and help other CEOs. Too many CEOs kind of are by themselves, trying to solve all the problems by themselves. And so we try to achieve there.
I want to hear more about your podcast. So, how do you pick your guests? How do you pick your topics?
Pick the guests. For now, it's quite simple. It's like whoever I know, and I think about send them an invitation. It's still pretty rare for people to say no to the podcast, so that's good. So since I'm in the solar industry with a lot of other CEOs I know, it's those people that we bring on, and then we extend to the manufacturers, vendors that are all part of the ecosystem. Try to have some officials, try to have some people on like a larger grid level, since we all have to participate on the grid and work with the grid. An expert from grid interconnections was on recently. And then clients, our own clients, that's an easy one, of course.
Give me just like a vibe check. So you've been working with the solar installers for a long time. How many years?
10 years.
10 years. 10 years. How are they feeling? Like, are they recovered from OB3? Is there hope? Like, what is the vibe right now?
It's hard. I think it's hard. It's just one more blow, and so I see it as like also kind of something positive, so that after this, you don't have to worry about solar installers being able to stand on their own feet. There is no incentives anymore. Granted, a lot of other places in the country, there's still state incentives and other incentives, right? But in the end, like the big incentive on the federal level is gone. So if you can survive, stand by yourself now, then you're good to go. Granted, there's still problems with supply chain and other issues. So I feel solar installers that we are part of an ecosystem, and you can run a very nice business, but then there's those external factors that can have a big impact on your business. That's just hard because you can't easily prepare for it. I remember when in the first Trump presidency, when the tariffs only went off for solar panels, we bought every solar panel that we could with on our cash flow, stacked our warehouse. Years later, I looked at, was that the right decision? And it was not. I paid like the top price already for the panels. The price of the panel went up when there was speculation of this happening, not when it actually happened. So I should have done absolutely nothing, I guess. But so it's those external policy impacts on the industry that's, I think, hard. And then there's also a change, I think, that solar installers have to deal more with batteries. And I think it's a driving force, so that more people on batteries and you provide more independent and self-powering systems. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think that that's exactly what I was thinking, is they've got to be going after batteries. And I imagine that just with the rise of electricity prices that we're seeing across the country, that's got to be creating some new interest. Are you seeing that? Are your installers seeing that?
Yes, there is, but I would say less than expected. Similarly, the price of gas goes up. Does that mean people drive less? I don't know. It doesn't look like people maybe a little bit here and there, but not like, it's not that you see half of the amount of cars on the roads. Like, it's just like the same. So you would think the price goes up, people drive less, but it seems to me the actual situation is the price goes up and people just pay for it and move on with their lives. So same with the solar. Like, yes, there are people looking into it, but I think less than I would hope for.
Yeah. So, Hervé, you deal with solar installers all the time, and there is a conversation that I'm hearing right now in the industry that talks about, so actually something that we've been talking about for years, and that is that our industry is outspent by oil and gas. And oil and gas, they are able to make a margin on fuel, and so a lot of times they're outspending us in politics and policy, even in how much community engagement they do. But one thing that I think is interesting, and I think more people are starting to notice, is that in solar, because the fuel is free and because it's really seen as like an upfront one time investment, not a lot of planning and investing ahead has been done in thinking through long term operations and maintenance costs. So, would you agree with that? And what are you seeing?
So when I sold my solar company, I knew very clearly, I was made aware that the warranties that you give to your customers is a very real number. At the time, we gave 12 years of warranty to labor warranty to our clients. And so we put it on the books when we had a very profitable year. At the same time, I realized like, wait, the warranties are not on the books. It's a liability. We should put it on the books. So it was on the books, but once you sold the business, that is part of the equation. And so it's a big number. And so that's a real liability that you owe to the buyer. And so that number of like, oh yeah, we do maintenance long term, we'll take care of you, becomes a really big number if you have a lot of customers. And so when you sell the business, it's a really big number. And so it is true that I think solar installers under not appreciate but undervalue the amount of warranties that they provide out there, and they don't always have a good view of all the work that is happening. Sorry, put my sales hat on again for Sunvoy, but once you see all your tickets coming through and the health of the entire system, everything combined, because you have some Enphase, some Tesla, some Solish, like all these different things, you put it in one place and all the tickets come through, then the CEO is like, that's how much O&M work we have. It's visible. You can see on one map all your open tickets, for example. So once it's visible, you can better manage it over time. And I think the industry will have to change to have more of a maintenance plan, just like you have for HVAC. I think the problem is twofold. Number one, solar installers like to be more like the hippies, like, hey, we set it up for you, you're never gonna fail, and so on. I think we know that it's construction and it's planet Earth, things fail. Even installed well, things just break down. So the hard part is that if your maintenance cost is at a certain level, but the amount of money you save on utility bill is below, like at some point you have a problem. You cannot charge more than what you would have on utility bill, right? So that is, I think, the battle to make sure that the maintenance cost is not too high. Otherwise, it removes incentive for people to go solar and save money. So that is one piece I think that's happening in the industry where solutions are found. You don't always need to have a truck roll to go fix something. So some pieces can be automated, be more aware of, and better way of making all the problems visible and putting an estimate to it.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad that you talked about that, Hervé, because for me, it goes back to one of the first things you talked about, and that is building trust. And I think a huge challenge, really a chronic challenge that we've seen in the industry, is that because there are some people who've had a bad experience, that has really affected the reputation of solar. And so to rebuild that trust, I think it's important for installers to really look closely at those numbers and not underestimate what would be involved in long-term care and O&M, because in the end of the day, hey, a lot of these installers now have this opportunity to go back to their customers, sell a battery or to sell more panels, and it's going to be harder to do without that trust. So I think this is a huge issue in the industry, and one that it doesn't just affect residential solar, it affects utility scale. Because if you ask anybody, when I'm driving to the solar show, when I was driving to RE Plus in Vegas in my Uber, they said, where you going? I'm going to the big solar show. They said, oh, like on your rooftop? So people the average folks, they just feel like they associate solar with rooftop solar. And it's really important, I think, for the whole industry for us to do some critical thinking about how we plan for, invest, and budget around long-term O&M for the sake of the industry's reputation. Last couple questions here. So you're a CEO, you've been running your own company for many years. What do you do to take care of yourself in your personal life? Like, how do you recharge your battery?
I talk to people. I make my decisions by talking to people. It's by me explaining a situation to somebody else that it kind of forms my own opinion about it too. I need to talk through it. And then I like to stay in contact with a lot of different people of all walks of life, customers, my own clients, stay in contact with them. I actually, on my calendar, every Friday, by the way, I block half an hour to just call my own clients and see how they're doing.
Ooh, I might steal that idea from you. That's a great idea. So you just block the time and you spend it catching up. That's smart.
Another piece that I do, and somebody told me like, well, you know how with your wife partner you want to go on a date, but then it never happens because there's kids with schedules. There's always something, and so you just don't do it. But pick an activity that you can actually do regularly with your wife. And he said like, do yoga. Like, I'm not into yoga, so I can't do that. But working out, my wife woke up at like 4 or 5 a.m. to go work out at a specific gym she liked and all that. And it was far and so on. But then we said like, why don't we just work out together? So in the basement, we have a place where we work out on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Nice.
And that's our date. That's literally before the kids wake up, and so it is painful because I don't like to wake up that early. But yeah, at 6 a.m. we just have our own date.
That's so good. So if you were going to talk to somebody, maybe it's somebody young who's thinking about starting a business, a solar installer business, what advice would you give to them right now in the market we're in today?
I've always started every business the same way, maybe a bit boring. First you sell, you find a customer. Once you have a customer that's willing to pay something, it means there is value. Granted, you better find more than one, right? If you have a few, that's a signal. Asking for people if it's a good idea or not, well, most people are going to say one thing or another, but if they actually need to pay for it, that's the only signal that matters. Otherwise, it's a bit too risky.
Great. I love it. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we end this interview?
Look into AI. So I spoke with some installers that said out of principle they do not want to work with AI, and although I respect that, I think it's a technology that's here to stay. The price may change, but then you have all the free versions. So it's a technology that I think cannot be put back in this genie bottle. It's out and it's there to be used. And if you don't use it, don't worry, your competitors will use it. The question is doing something useful with it, and it's a technology that people will have to adapt to one way or another. So I'm more of the optimistic point of view that it's a technology that you can harness and tame and make something for yourself out of it, and for your company, for your employees. And I don't think it's gonna replace people. I think it's just gonna create other opportunities. Just like a car replaced, I guess, horses and so on. Well, all those people that were making saddles and taking care of horses, well, they have just different jobs today, I guess. So that's maybe one piece that AI is getting more and more real, and so it's worth your time looking into it.
Can you think of a use case for a CEO of a solar installation company for AI?
Yes, but that's a tiny podcast. The
That's
short
okay.
answer is, so it's been very much on my mind, by the way. So the short answer is you can only really use AI if you have data. Without data, your AI is just the plain vanilla, not going anywhere kind of style, or like it looks kind of all right. So the question is not what you can do with AI, it's like it's which data do you actually have. Once you have the data, you can do things with it. So the data is obviously inverter data, but customer information data, meeting data, sales conversation data, emails. Like think about all the data that you have that today you think is completely useless, no value, just pure transactional, but there's actually a ton of value in that.
Terrific. This was great. Hervé, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I love learning about Sunvoy and all you have to offer, and just appreciate you sharing your advice and wisdom with our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Our producer is Claire Quirin. If you like what you hear on Scaling Clean episodes, we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment where you get your podcast. And until next time, we wish you all the best in the clean economy transition.